The Whispering Woods of Woe. Deep in the heart of the forest, where trees twisted and gnarled with age, and sunlight barely pierced the canopy above, stood a small cabin. It was here that Emma had decided to spend a week alone, hoping to reconnect with nature and find solace after a painful breakup. The woods, with their eerie silence and whispering winds, seemed the perfect place to heal. The first night passed without incident, though Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She tried to brush it off as paranoia, focusing instead on the journaling and meditation she had planned. But as the sun dipped below the horizon on the second day, strange noises began to echo through the forest. At first, they were distant and subtle, twigs snapping, leaves rustling. But as night fell, the sounds grew louder and closer. Emma tried to convince herself it was just wildlife, but the creaking trees sounded almost like footsteps, heavy and deliberate. She barricaded herself inside the cabin, her heart racing. That's when she started hearing her name, whispered softly on the wind. "Emma, Emma." It was a voice she knew, a voice that sent shivers down her spine. Her ex-boyfriend's voice, long dead. The whispers grew more urgent, more menacing. Emma's grip on reality began to slip. She scratched out frantic journal entries, her hands shaking as she wrote. The voice grew louder, more insistent, until she could feel her ex-boyfriend's cold breath on the back of her neck. One night, the cabin door creaked open by itself. Emma cowered in the corner, her eyes fixed on the figure standing in the doorway. It was him, or something that wore his face. The eyes were black as coal, and the voice, now a growl, whispered her name one last time before the darkness consumed her. The next morning, search parties found the cabin empty, the door wide open. Emma's journal lay on the floor, filled with madness and terror. Some say on quiet nights, you can still hear her screams echoing through the woods, mingling with the whispers of the dead. Others claim to have seen her, running through the trees, forever trapped in that forest of horrors. The woods remain untouched, a place where the living aren't welcome. The Shadows of Blackwood Forest Drive. Lisa Taylor, a renowned psychologist, had always been fascinated by the human mind's response to isolation. She had spent years studying cases of people who had survived alone in the wilderness, and she had developed a theory that the experience could be therapeutic, helping individuals confront their deepest fears. To test her theory, she decided to spend a month alone in Blackwood Forest, one of the most remote and untouched places in the country. The forest was infamous for its dark history. Locals whispered about strange occurrences and unexplained disappearances. But Lisa was skeptical, attributing the stories to small-town superstition. She arrived at the forest's edge on a crisp autumn morning, her backpack loaded with supplies and her notebook filled with questions. The dense canopy swallowed her whole as she stepped into the woods. The first few days were grueling, but peaceful. Lisa settled into a routine, journaling her thoughts and exploring the forest. She built a small shelter and started a fire, marveling at the simplicity of her new life. But as the days turned into weeks, she began to feel the weight of her solitude. At first, it was just small things. A snapped twig that sounded like footsteps, the fleeting glimpse of a shadow out of the corner of her eye. Lisa rationalized these occurrences, attributing them to the forest's wildlife or her own tired mind. One night, she woke to the sound of whispering. It was soft and indistinct, but it seemed to come from all around her. Lisa tried to shake off the unease, telling herself it was just the wind rustling through the leaves. But the whispers grew louder, more urgent. She recognized snippets of conversation, phrases that sounded eerily like her own patient's words during therapy sessions. "You're not safe. You shouldn't be here." Lisa's grip on reality began to slip. She started to question her own identity, wondering if she was truly alone or if someone, or something, was playing a twisted game with her. The forest seemed to be shifting around her, the trees closing in like sentinels. She wrote furiously in her journal, trying to make sense of the chaos in her mind. One night, she stumbled upon an old, decrepit cabin deep in the woods. The door creaked open with a dreadful screech, revealing a room filled with rusted medical equipment and dusty journals. Lisa felt an inexplicable connection to the place, as if she had stumbled into her own dark past. She spent hours poring over the journals, realizing they belonged to a doctor who had conducted inhumane experiments on patients in the very same woods. The whispers grew louder, more menacing. Lisa's notes became increasingly erratic. She began to suspect that she was not alone in the forest, that the ghosts of the past were haunting her. One entry stood out. "I've seen them. The shadows. They're coming for me." The next morning, search parties found Lisa's shelter empty, her belongings scattered. Her journal was found near the old cabin, filled with madness and terror. Some say on quiet nights, you can still hear her screams echoing through Blackwood Forest, mingling with the whispers of the damned. Others claim to have seen her, wandering the woods, forever trapped in that labyrinth of horrors. The forest remains untouched, a place where the living aren't welcome. The Echoes of Raven's Peak. Ava had always been drawn to the supernatural and the unexplained. As a paranormal investigator, she had explored countless abandoned asylums, haunted mansions, and eerie forests. But nothing piqued her interest like Raven's Peak, a remote mountain shrouded in mist and legend. The locals avoided it, whispering tales of strange occurrences and unexplained disappearances. Determined to uncover the truth, Ava set out to spend a week alone on Raven's Peak, equipped with nothing but her camera, audio recorders, and a deep sense of curiosity. The climb was grueling, but the higher she ascended, the more she felt an otherworldly energy. At the peak, she set up her camp, determined to capture evidence of the paranormal activity that supposedly plagued the area. The first few nights were uneventful, with only the wind and wildlife breaking the silence. But on the fourth night, Ava started to pick up strange audio recordings. Whispers, disembodied voices, and eerie laughter echoed through her equipment. She tried to capture images, but the camera's memory cards remained blank, as if something was preventing her from documenting the truth. One night, Ava woke to the sound of her own voice, whispering a phrase she didn't recognize. "They're coming for you." She spun around, but there was no one there. The voice grew louder, more urgent. Ava's grip on reality began to slip. She started to question her own identity, wondering if she was truly alone or if some malevolent force was manipulating her. The voices grew more intense, the whispers coalescing into a single, menacing phrase, "Get out while you still can." Ava tried to flee, but her feet felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. That's when she saw them, shadowy figures emerging from the mist, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Ava's camera captured one final image, a figure standing just beyond the tree line, its face twisted into a grotesque grin. The audio recorders picked up her screams, echoing through the mist-shrouded peak. The next morning, search parties found Ava's camp abandoned, her equipment scattered. Some say on quiet nights, You can still hear her screams echoing through Raven's Peak, mingling with the whispers of the unknown. Others claim to have seen her, wandering the misty peak, forever trapped in that realm of terror. The peak remains untouched, a place where the living dare not tread. The darkness of Dead Man's Swamp. Mark, a seasoned adventurer, had explored some of the most treacherous terrains on Earth. But nothing could have prepared him for the horrors that awaited him in Dead Man's Swamp. Located deep in the bayou, the swamp was infamous for its treacherous waters, venomous wildlife, and an aura of dread that seemed to cling to every cypress tree. Mark's plan was to spend a week navigating the swamp, documenting its unique ecosystem, and perhaps uncovering some of its secrets. He packed his gear, including a state-of-the-art camera and a robust airboat, and set off into the heart of the swamp. The first few days were grueling, with the swamp's unforgiving environment testing Mark's endurance. But as the sun began to set on the third day, Mark started to feel an unsettling presence. At first, it was just a feeling of being watched. But soon he began to notice strange occurrences. Equipment would go missing, only to reappear in strange places. Footprints, not his own, would appear in the mud. One night, Mark woke to the sound of drums echoing through the swamp. The beat was primal, pulsing with a malevolent energy. Mark tried to ignore it, but the drums grew louder, more insistent. That's when he started to see them. Shadowy figures darting between the cypress trees, their eyes glowing like embers. Mark's camera captured strange, unexplained images. A figure standing just beyond the reach of the light, a face twisted into a grotesque grimace. The audio recorders picked up disembodied voices, whispering dark secrets in a language Mark couldn't understand. As the days passed, Mark's grip on reality began to slip. He became convinced that the swamp was alive, and it was hunting him. The drums grew louder, the voices more urgent. Mark's last entry in his journal was a desperate plea. "Get me out of here." The next morning, search parties found Mark's airboat, abandoned and adrift. His camera and audio recorders lay nearby, but there was no sign of Mark. Some say on quiet nights, you can still hear the drums echoing through Dead Man's Swamp, mingling with the whispers of the damned. Others claim to have seen Mark, paddling through the swamp, forever trapped in that labyrinth of horrors. The swamp remains untouched, a place where the living dare not tread.